Hello, everyone. It's me. My name is Dion Aviantoro, and
Yep.
I'm with gimana nih itu bilangnya?
Yeah. My name is Sean Antonius Rudolph Sikoma, but for short you can call me Masiko. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now we're about to do an interview. Okay.
Yeah.
Before we begin, I would like to ask Mr. Ziko
No, yeah. If you wanna call
to
me Mister
introduce
or what, it's
himself.
fine. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Mas Dion. As you have heard my name is Jean Antonius Rudolph Sikomao, but for short you can call me Mr. Siko or Masiko. And recently I've been working in one of the security consulting companies in Jakarta. Yeah. And but long before I work here, I used to be a guide, which required me back then to be an interpreter. So it's quite challenging because back then my job as a guide, uh, to be honest, is quite demanding as well because whenever we meet local people, especially the Japanese people, bridge. I need to bridge the language gap between my client and the local people they were interviewing. Yeah. So in one occasion, I remember that I used to speak English and also Japanese. I guess you can imagine how difficult it is. So I'm not usually I talk to my clients with English and I talk to the local people with Indonesian bahasa Indonesia. But this time I have to use uh, Japanese dialect, which is much more complex.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all from me. And by the way, you have told me that you are curious about my job as a guide. So you feel free to ask anything.
Mm.
Satu.
It's really interesting. Okay, let's move to the next question. So for Mr. Ziko, what language that you interpreted?
Oh yeah, language. Back then as a guide, I used to speak three language or at the same time. English mainly because I worked as an English guide back then. And then Bahasa Indonesia, this is most general one. And the last one is Japanese. Yeah, as I have explained briefly,
Mhm.
yeah, uh, it's quite challenging. But when I deal with English in Bahasa Indonesia, it's fine because my background as well as a translator, I used to deal with the texts from both language. Yeah, Bahasa Indonesia and English. But It becomes it became much more challenging when I have to deal with the local people who could not speak bahasa Indonesia.
Okay.
You see, uh, when I work as a guide, at some occasions I had to drive them, I had to accompany them to the remote areas in Yogyakarta. That
Mhm.
means I had to be with them when they wanted to travel to the remote villages in Yogyakarta or Central Java. That being said, I had to prepare myself to speak in Javanese dialects, are which were very difficult. One of the difficulties can be found in the vocabularies involved. You
Mhm.
see, in Japanese, there are some words that cannot be translated into English, and that also works the other way around. Let's take this one for example. In Japanese, uh,
Mhm.
we have upo, seko, and then what else? Pari. I'm sorry. Upo, seko, pari, and sawah.
Yes.
In bahasa Indonesia, it becomes sawah dan padi, nasi, three. When it comes to English, it only becomes single word, rice.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, rice. at most rice field for sawah. Okay, yeah. This kind of situation is known as translation loss. And when it comes to interpreting, we have to prepare ourselves to deal with the same thing. Yeah. And then how can I explain it? Well, how can I deal with this kind of situation? At that time, I used, this is the best way possible. Uh, we use the object, yeah, and then we explain the object with their words. So, yeah, basically, I do some kind of borrowing the word from the local text and explain it in English with the client. Yeah, that's the challenge that I used to have when I work as a guide.
Oh, so Mr. Zico, the language that you interpreted are English, Bahasa Indonesia, and Japanese.
Japanese, not
Yeah,
Japanese. Japanese is very different. Japanese,
Japanese.
Japanese.
Hey, hey, yeah. I'm sorry, I love that.
It's fine.
Okay, okay. Let's move to the next question. So, long you been in? Have you been an interpreter?
Okay, that questions, I guess it dates back to the time of my service as a guide. It means about 2.5 years. I started working as a guide right after I quitted being a teacher. That was in 2014, and then I start working as a guide around when 2017, early 2017. Yeah, so it means I've been working about 2.5 years. And why did I stop? I stopped working as a guide because I had to pursue my higher education in master degree. That's why I'm afraid that I couldn't do proper time management, so that's why I have to make a choice. Yeah. So
Okay.
basically, it was about 2.5 years.
Mm. Okay. Next question. Can you tell us the experience as an interpreter? Like, can you mention the challenging or the do's and the don'ts
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
based on your
Uh,
experience?
yeah. I'd be very happy to share it with you, Mas Dian. So the challenges is indeed with the vocabularies. Yeah. This means you have to learn more and more vocabularies, be it from the source language and the target language. Yeah. In this case, if we learn about 3 languages, it means we have to hone ourselves in Japanese, Bahasa Indonesia, and English. Yeah. You have to mind this very carefully because especially in English, because every single day we find more and more vocabularies,
Mhm.
especially since we live in the digital era, which means the spread of information is so rapid that it only takes milliseconds for us to
Mm.
gain this new experience. Yeah, so that's the challenge. And then about, yeah, excuse me, do and don'ts. Yeah, or some tips you would like to say.
I'm sorry.
Some tips in being an
Yeah.
interpreter,
Yes.
or
Some tips.
oh yeah. So yep, the first one. So very first one, expand your vocabulary,
Mhm.
and the second one, try to stay professional. It means that although you don't know or you lost some words in explaining or in doing this interpreting activity, just try to work hard to explain it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mhm. And then the third one is, let me remember. Oh, don't while you are talking, yeah, while you are talking, do not spend time too long to pause. Like and it's not very it's very bad. It will leave bad impression, and people will think that you are not ready for the job. Whereas we all know that you are ready. You have so much background knowledge, and but you only have problems in sharing your ideas.
Okay.
And next, practice makes perfect. That is very, very important to remember. After you learn so many vocabularies, try to speak in front of the mirror. Just speak anything. You may share your story, you may share an article, you may talk about anything. Just talk about anything because the more you talk, the more you make yourself fluent in speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.